So this one's called More Inflation Coming. So as most of you know, I live in Finland and I still look at the news in the UK just to sort of keep up to date with what's going on. And I noticed something yesterday that was quite a big announcement, quite newsworthy, but it seems to have just been, well, barely covered by the mainstream media. And what it is, it's a change to the welfare system. There's going to be some new welfare payments coming on stream. And what I'll do is I'll show you an article now, and you can freeze the screen and read it for yourself. And it's from Sky News. So according to Sunak, he's going to pay 8 million households, and these are people who are already on welfare benefits of various types. He's going to pay them £900 each towards coping with inflation. Food prices I've seen in England are going up by about 20% food inflation. I did predict that this was going to happen a year ago, and it was just a consequence of the combination of lockdown, crushed aggregate supply, and the reckless money printing to finance furlough, bounce back loans, help out to eat out, and all the other crazy stuff that went on. Anyway, he's promised to make this £900 payment to 8 million households 3 times. So if you actually do the maths there and multiply 8 million by £900 multiplied by 3, because there's going to be 3 payments, that comes to 21,600 million, which is £21.6 billion, which is a lot of money. If you work that out per taxpayer, it's just about £1,000 per taxpayer extra that's being spent there. So where's this money going to come from? Sunak didn't announce tax increases to pay for this welfare giveaway, so one can only presume that it's going to be financed through, well, they'll say borrowing, but more accurately, more money printing. Now, something else that I found quite interesting was that there was some various YouTubers who, like to think that they're on the right side of the argument, and they were saying that this is a good thing and poor people should claim this free money. As an economist, I take a different line of argument on things like this, because you've got to consider both the short run and the long run impacts of any change to assess whether it's a good or a bad change. So what I'm going to do now is just go through that with you. So contrary to popular belief, inflation is the annual percentage increase in the money supply, the total amount of money in circulation. That's what inflation is. Rising prices is just a consequence of inflation. The media will say that rising prices is inflation. That's not true. Rising prices are just a consequence of central banks and their mates in government creating too much money. And if the money supply grows at a faster rate than the economy, then prices will end up being pushed upwards, because too much money will be chasing too few goods. And that's basically the underlying cause of this cost of living crisis. So, the big question then is, what will this scheme do? Well, you're going to be creating an extra £26 billion worth of spending in the economy through these welfare payments. Are these households going to be producing more goods and services in exchange for these payments? The answer is probably not, because they're on welfare in the first place. So for me, it's baked into the cake that this is actually going to cause more inflation. So what the government has done is it's tried to ease the effects of inflation by printing more money, which is going to cause an even higher rate of inflation in the future. There's going to be an even greater cost of living crisis going forward once this extra £21.6 billion has been created by the government and the central bank and spent. And what bugs me is that no one's talking about this at all. You know, as I say, even like some YouTubers who are supposedly on our side are actually talking about how this is a good thing. When from my perspective, it's a completely bad thing, because it's going to increase inflation. It's going to increase everybody's cost of living. You know, you don't try to put out a fire by throwing petrol on the fire. You know, it's just going to make the flames even worse. And this is the same. You don't cure inflation, or you don't ease the effects of inflation by creating more of it. And that's what the government is going to do. It's going to create an extra £21.6 billion worth of spending. And that's going to increase the cost of living, not just of the poor, but of everybody else. So inflation, you know, I've heard it said, it is a tax, isn't it? It's a tax on people's incomes that barely 1 in 10,000 will be able to spot. I think that was one thing, the one and only thing that Keynes got right. The other thing I think that's going on here is a divide and rule play. So if you look at most people who are in employment, who are actually working, their wage increases are nowhere near what inflation is. So that means that their living standards are plummeting, because everything costs more money. They are getting wage increases, but the wage increases aren't big enough to match the price rises. So each month they can buy less and less stuff. So on the other hand, welfare benefits are going up in line with inflation. So it's particularly rough, I think, on the people who are still working and paying taxes. And I think, you know, there's likely to be even more of a disincentive to work effect. You know, if people aren't seeing their wages being topped up with inflation, they might do what it was said on that Tetley Bitter advert from the 1970s. You know, if you can't beat them, join them. You know, maybe I need to go on welfare too, and that way my income will be inflation protected, because welfare benefits, unlike wages, are going up in line with inflation. So, you know, in summary, there's a little bit of trolling of working people going on in Britain. The government and the central banks are creating inflation, which is killing people's living standards. And, you know, yesterday, I think you had this guy from the Bank of England, bloke called Hugh Pill, basically saying that, you know, Brits have got to get used to having a lower standard of living. And it's quite ironic, really, when the Bank of England's job is to control inflation. You know, Brits are suffering from falling living standards caused by inflation, and the Bank of England's only job is to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that's exactly what they've done. They've actually failed in that one duty that they had. People's incomes, people's savings are not being protected from inflation. The Bank of England has let down the British people. And then furthermore, they're not even getting an apology from the Bank of England. All they're getting is just being trolled, you know, you better get used to a lower standard of living due to inflation. So yeah, that's all I want to say today. So God bless.